you're happy with how you're going to deal with that conflict? Yep.
Yeah, it's non-significant, non-pecuniary,
Yep.
so I will remain in the meeting. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll now go back to the CEO. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. So speakers, if a speaker digresses to irrelevant matters, the chairperson is to direct the speaker not to do so. If a speaker fails to observe a direction from the chairperson, the speaker will not be further heard. A councillor, including the chairperson, may, through the chairperson, ask questions of a speaker following their address at a public forum. Questions put to a speaker must be direct, succinct, and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer a question put to them. However, answers by the speaker to each question are to be limited to 1 minute. Speakers at public forums cannot ask questions of the council, councillors, or council staff. When addressing the council, speakers at public forums must comply with this code and all other relevant council codes, policies and procedures. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the council's code of conduct, or making other potentially defamatory statements. If the chairperson considers that a speaker at a public forum has engaged in inappropriate conduct, the chairperson may request the person refrain from inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the speaker fails to comply with the chairperson's request, the chairperson may immediately require the person to stop speaking. This does not limit the ability of the chairperson to deal with disorderly conduct by speakers at public forums in accordance with the provisions of the code. Where a speaker engages in inappropriate conduct, the general manager or their delegate may refuse further applications from that person to speak at public forums for such a period as the general manager or the delegate considers appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We have 2 items for today's public forum. I'll now invite our first speaker up, which is Mr. Lindsay Kay, who will speak for item 10.4, Code of Meeting Practice. Thank you, Mr. Kay.
Councillors, citizens, it's with great pleasure that I can actually vote or address the meeting for something for a change. This is probably the most important thing that we will consider in this term. It has to be acknowledged that there is a lack of community engagement, and the Code of Conduct is currently an enormous impediment to that engagement with the public. The sheer verbiage involved in having to agree to what the acting general manager just said is like the terms and conditions you have to accept for Windows 11. No one will actually read it, and yet they're supposed to be bound by it. This is an opportunity to right some of those issues. As the acting general manager said, people cannot ask questions in the public forum. Indeed, they can't ask questions really at all. There are provisions in the current Code of Conduct which prohibit the asking of questions even in writing, at least in the sense that they will not be answered. You can ask them, but they won't be answered, and there is no requirement for them to be answered. I hope that the public engages with this public exhibition and makes many, many, many proposed alterations to it, and that those alterations are considered carefully before you go for the vote to adopt it all in September. Why do people feel that there is a problem with speaking at a public forum? Why aren't there more people here every time? The community is engaged to the sense that they don't like what's going on. They want change, but they don't have a means of making themselves effectively heard. This is an opportunity to give them that means. There was a previous notice of motion that raised many of the things that I would accept as being reasonable changes to the Code of Conduct, but that motion failed at the meeting, and we've been waiting for the Office of Local Government to come up with a model code, which I'm reliably informed will never happen. So we need to get this done, and we need to get it right. So I commend the process of public exhibition to you, and I will make all of my pages of amendments available during that process. So I commend this to you, and please let's make it happen right this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Wyatt, and yes, just acknowledging Councillor Wyatt has tuned into the public forum a bit late, but she's here. So ask your question.
Thank you. Councillor White's not well either, I'm sorry. My question is, in a minute, are you able to quickly outline what changes you think should be, or what are your alterations that you think should be in the Code of Meeting Practice?
Well, as I outlined, I definitely think the questions from the floor are very important, that items that aren't on the business papers should also be able to be raised by the public. I think it is necessary that when the public asks a question, that it does get an answer. It can be that the answer is brief and no, but if the public do ask questions, then they need to be given answers. There is an old saying that says you should never elect a tyrant, and that usually is because there are provisions that a tyrant could enact that would not be to the benefit of the community that they serve or supposedly serve. And so it is with the current Code of Conduct. There's far too much power vested in a couple of people. There's a lot of provisions that basically give extended powers to a couple of people. And there's no real need. Why have those provisions at all? There's 4.17 must go. There's a couple of things where there's just problems with the wording, but really it's about giving the public more equitable access to voice their opinions, whether those opinions be accepted or not.
Thank you, Mr. Kay, and I will stop you there.
I'm always ready. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ready and willing to commit my 2.5 cents worth. Madam Mayor, councillors, council staff and my fellow ratepayers, I have elected to speak in favour of item 11.1 notice of motion, rates and fees policy for several reasons, but primarily because the methodologies used by council to determine the rate amounts that appear as line items on each ratepayer's rate notice are obscure to say the least, especially in regard to the rated category line item. However, I'm also aware that there is an increase in this line item as a result of recent determinations by council, and that this increase as part of the IPART SRV process is being added to, and so often it's not at all well understood by the general public and ratepayers. Other aspects of the rates calculations, specifically the ad valorem figure, arrived at by what can only be described as accounting and mathematical witchcraft, as far as most people are concerned, are not well explained, if at all, on the existing so-called explanatory pages on council's website. I'm also aware that when the SRV was first mooted, the announcement was accompanied by an online rate calculator into which ratepayers could input their rated amount from their then current rates notice, and the calculator would then update this according to the proposed different percentages of SRV increase. This was very helpful for people to calculate what the change to their rates would be. It would be helpful if this calculator, or perhaps even a better one, was made available in the future, so people could see what precisely had changed and on what line item and by how much. But the real issue for ratepayers is the complete and total lack of anything approximating transparency in the methodology council staff use to determine the rated amount. Officially, I believe this is referred to as the land category rate. In endeavouring to get my head around it, I was forced to rely on the forbearance of nowhere do these appear in any explanation of how the actual rate is calculated, thereby making the entire calculation process completely opaque as far as any ordinary ratepayer is concerned. It is my contention that clarification of this process is required in order that council's rate charging process does not continue to be viewed as entirely arbitrary and lacking in anything reasonably approaching transparency. As a professional writer and copywriter, I'd be happy to assist in the drafting of any such explanation, as my special expertise is writing in plain English, such that even persons with minimal understanding can comprehend complex issues, policies, and methodologies. What I can assure every councillor and staff member here today is that the existing explanations, while not deliberately obscure or opaque, are insufficient for anyone with even a rudimentary understanding to properly figure out what it is council is charging them and why. As the notice of motion sets out, it is council's responsibility to be as transparent as possible so that the public can understand the process and the methodologies. This is not happening at present, and it ought to be clarified. I hope that you will support this motion so that changes can be implemented and clarity achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your presentation. Councillors, do we have any questions? I hear none. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Walker and Mr. Kay. I appreciate your diligence in turning up and speaking to the councillors. That concludes our for coming.